So we're going to have a special shiur today. We had a request to go over some of the things in the Parshat Shavua and Parshat Pinchas. So we'll mostly be doing stuff that does not have connections to Mareh Yaakov, although we will try to bring in as many connections as we can. There are a variety of literary devices that we find as we read through Torah that hint or tell us that something more is going on than the word itself actually says. So sometimes we will have letters that are written bigger or smaller. We'll get to it. We have a very special one in this week's parsha, in that we have a letter that is actually split. And we have some sentences that seem to all of a sudden end in the middle. We have something that's called a k'tiv and a kri, something that is written in one way and pronounced in another way. And we have sometimes words with a dot on top of them. And we will find examples of all of these in this week's parsha. We will also find things that are agrammatical. We'll find words that seem to be changed, and we need to explain why they're not in the form that they should be. So we're going to start with the very beginning of the parsha, with God says to Moses, Pinchas ben Elazar, Pinchas the son of Elazar. We have a question already.
We have a question because I don't know if you said it. So I was telling someone about the parsha, but the shalom is obviously broken, that it's usually puzzle.
Okay, well, why don't we wait until we get to that and you'll have the comment then? Or you want to add it?
No, I just want to know. You told me someone, was it you that said, I said it was puzzle if it's not broken, which is ironic, since shalom and shalom. They said no, they've seen it full, and there's two ways, both are acceptable.
Yes.
Did you say it last week?
Yes.
Oh, I was shocked, okay.
So
we preferred the broken because it has
I'll actually. So why don't we'll get to it, but
that's in the first paragraph.
It's in the first paragraph. We're at the title word. We have a title. Pinchas.
Eponymous. What's that word?
Eponymous. Yes.
That means if it's in the titular, or maybe. No, when you're talking about, let's say something's in the title, and you refer back to it, you say.
I think it's eponymous. No, I don't think it's. Okay, then
well, titular, because it's in the title, so not titular.
Okay, so the word Pinchas, the letter Yud in the word Pinchas is written smaller than a normal Yud is written.
Which is pretty hard to do because Yud is already the smallest letter.
So this is called a Yud Ze'ira, Zayin, Ayin, Yud, Resh, Aleph. It's because it's an Aramaic word, not a Hebrew word.
But I think it's related to Ze'ira, little, I'm sure. Is that it? Zayin and Tzadi are similar. Se'ira, like a little, not born yet. Yeah.
So, homonyms in Hebrew, words that sound the same, or words that are almost alike except have a letter changed in Hebrew, also have a connection. Right. And we learn that the one that has the letter that is closer to the beginning of the alphabet in Hebrew is usually the higher version, and the one with the later on letter is usually the lower version of that.
Zion would be
I hadn't thought about the difference between Ze'ira and Se'ira, but obviously there's got to be something that has that type of a connection between those two words.
And Zohar. This is Noach. I'm going to connect this to Noach. The window, Sohar, is related to Zohar. They always make that point. So they're very Kabbalistic. So there you see it.
And so there you see it. The ark had Sohar. The ark had a window to allow light in, but the light itself is obviously more elevated than just the window. So the light itself would be called Zohar, something that's shining through. And the portal that lets it into this lower world is a Tzohar.
And
so that's a Zayin and a Tzadi in the same word, and it tells us that the one near the beginning of the alphabet is usually the more elevated or more higher form, and there is a relationship between the two.
Isn't Zira, like in this letter, like Robert, isn't it Aramaic, that form?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we know that Aramaic and Hebrew are sister language.
Yeah. So let's go back to the actual word we're talking about.
So we're talking about the word Pinchas. We're talking about his name.
And So that letter is which?
That letter, the yud,
Yud.
this after the pei is a yud. The yud is written smaller than a normal yud would be written. So
And
we have to.
is there an Aramaic meaning to Ze'ira?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
No, I know.
Oh. What does Ze'ira mean in Aramaic? Probably Sa'ir, little or something.
No, shortened.
Sure.
Made smaller, shortened.
Okay, so a Sa'ir is a short, a young person is going to have to, Why do you have to
So the Talmud in Yonah tells us that the number of Kohen Gadols that there were in both of Batei HaMikdash was a total of 308. 8 in the first, 8 through the entire time of the first Beis HaMikdash, and 300 through the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. If you take the word Yud Ze'ira and you write it out in full, Yud, Vav, Daled, Zayin, Ayin, Yud, Resh, Aleph, and then you add together the numerical value of all of those, it's going to add to 308. So the first thing is that we see that the equivalence that Pinchas has now attained is that of all the future Kohanim Gedolim. And there certainly are midrashim that connect all of them to him in some familial way. Even the ones who later on who got the title in perhaps a less than kosher manner still seem to have some connection.
Well, they were all by like the monarchy, by birth.
Correct.
So
no. In the second Beis HaMikdash, there were some people who got it through influence, but they also seem to have some connection to Pinchas. So we'll connect.
Well, that's what I said. They would have to.
We'll connect this to Rashi in a minute. The other 308 that we find is Elazar. Elazar, the other son of Aaron. If you add together his name, you also get 308. So we start with the fact that Pinchas did an act that calmed down God's anger over what the people had done, and we find that God is going to promise him something. He's going to promise him peace. And then we say, "V'haita lo ulzaro acharav brit keunat olam," that for him and for his descendants, they will now have a covenant of kahuna, of being priests forever.
Where's the Shalom is the next pasuk or something?
Shalom is the pasuk before that, but we're going to come back to it because we're still talking about Yud Ze'ira.
Yud Ze'ira, right.
So, what does Rashi say when we come to this pasuk? He says that up until this point, Pinchas was not in fact a Kohen. He was just a regular Levi. That Aaron and Elazar and all of Aaron's regular children at the time were anointed together, but Pinchas, being a grandchild, wasn't anointed in the original batch of Kohanim, and his children from there on were not going to be Kohanim of any type. They were going to be regular Leviim, and only from this point on, once Pinchas acts to zealously protect God's honor, does he and his descendants get this blessing of being Kohanim from there on in. So the
he wouldn't have been a Kohen Gadol. He would not have
been a Kohen at all. He would have been a regular Levi.
So what would have happened after Aaron's children died? Two died, not Abihu, right. But two was left.
Elazar and Itamar.
Right, so after they died,
their children would have continued.
But wait a minute, Pinchas ben Elazar.
But he wasn't anointed at that time. So therefore, it just goes to Elazar's children from that point on, and that's what Rashi says.
You mean that they weren't born then? They're younger than Pinchas.
Why was he not?
So if he had any children after they were anointed, those children would become would get kahuna.
More than,
but
but that doesn't
more
make
than
sense.
Pinchas, who was already born at the time, was another Levi. There were lots of other Leviim, and they didn't get kahuna either.
Wait a minute. Let's say
Okay,
you didn't have more kids.
Let's read through the Rashi
I see the
and
Shiur readers, I'm very happy.
see
No.
specifically what he says. So again, we're saying after this point, the Haitalo. From here on in, he's going to have it.
After the point
So-
of the zealous act
Correct.
of the penetration, no pun intended.
Brit kahunat olam. So Rashi says, she'afal pi shekvar nitna kahuna lezarot shel Aaron. Even though the concept of being a Kohen had been given to the descendants of Aaron, lo nitna, it was not given, ela la'Aaron ulevanav, just to Aaron and his sons, shenim shechu imo, who were anointed together with Aaron at the original ceremony when they became Kohanim.
And who was that? Who was that?
Uletoldotehem. And for everybody who was born from that point on. So that's Aaron, Elazar, and Itamar. And any of their descendants from that point on. Pinchas was already born. So he's before that.
Me, that's like a seniority.
But why
So
would they
Uletoldotehem sheyolidu acharei hamshachatan. That were born after this particular event. Aval Pinchas shenolad kodem, Pinchas who was born before lachein, before this, v'lo nimshach, and wasn't anointed together with them, lo ba'ali klal kehuna, did not become one of the people who were made into kohanim, ad kan, until this point. V'kein shaninu bizvachim, this is what we learned in Gemara and Zvachim, lo nitkahen Pinchas ad shaharagol lezimun. Pinchas did not become a Kohen until he disposed of Zimun.
This was the whole new life.
So-
Now I'm thinking he did the zealous act just to become a Kohen. He was mad about that. He had nothing to do with those two guys that were having sex there.
Well, he didn't know that he was going to get this. This was not
Yeah.
something that was promised.
In
Okay, let's say-
contrast,
let's say-
Korah
They just
was
say
a
go over
relative.
the-
let's say Elazar, I was joking for a
And,
minute. Let's say Elazar didn't have kids.
publicly executing the head of a tribe might actually be
This could
considered a
qualify.
capital crime.
Of course. There was
So this is not something small.
a big chance, right?
Now we're going to
Not
have
something small that you're out.
now we're going to have our little Mareh Yaakov talk here. V'haitalo ulezaro acharav brit kunat olam. It will be for him and for his children afterwards a covenant of kahuna, of becoming a member of the priesthood forever.
It's so hard
So
to believe that Pinchas wasn't going to get Kuna. If this hadn't happened, he wouldn't have been.
so there are other Mefarshim who don't agree with the view of Rashi.
I'm one of those. Okay.
So this is
And
but
they say what, that he would have gotten it anyway.
that he would have
Just
gotten it anyways,
by
and in
his
fact that he
lineage,
had it before.
The fact that
But
he's
this
the
is
son of-
this
yeah.
is the view of Rashi, and he depends on the Gemara in Zvachim. So he doesn't come to it without basis.
Do we know that Itamar, who is it, Itamar and Elazar, that Elazar had other children? Because if he didn't have other children, then it would have gone to Pinchas anyways.
I'm sure.
We're not sure.
I'm sure they're documented somewhere in Yehoshua. I would have to look it up, who the next Kohen Gadol was. But I'm sure that lineage is
Now getting back
is
to what you said
defined.
before, the 8 and the first bit and the
And the
300. Is that because the bigger number shows that they weren't such good, but that they were, there's a big over, like the fact that there's 8 in such a long period
Mhm.
shows they were good and they lasted for a long time each, right? Like Queen Elizabeth now, or 60 years too, right? The fact that we're 300, that's not a good thing, it's a bad thing.
With the
Yeah.
possible exception of Eli, but yes. And so we're going to now use the skills that we've learned to try to learn what's going on here. That Pinchas is getting this covenant from God, and he's going to wrap that into something that becomes his. So v'haita, and it will be, has a mapach. It's going to sweep what came before and focus it forward into what's going to come after. Lo, to him, he's going to be a focus now. So he's going to have a pashta on his name, and from this point on, we're going to split what would have happened from before and move it forward, ulezaro, with a munach, It's going to say that before his descendants did not have the ability to become Kohanim, and from this point on they are. Acharav, after him, both to include him and to include them. So a katon, it includes both of them, concept of two. Brit, the covenant is going to sweep back to the act that he did, and kahunat of priesthood, the priesthood they didn't have before, the priesthood they're going to have from this point on. So again, we get a munach, and it's going to be something that is going to be permanent forever, and that's going to have the stabilizing etnachta.
I was also wondering when I was reading this pasuk, Lizaro Acharav, if the duality is Acharav in time, his descendants, and Acharav who follow his heart.
Okay, agreed. So again, that's our Yud Ze'ira and Pinchas, and how it connects to what Rashi says about Pinchas getting kahuna at this point in time.
Stop a second.